Hi, classmates of Psychology 626. My name is Nicolette Hollowell, and like all of y'all, we've been assigned a specific topic about cognition and how that applies to different cultures. So my group member and I were assigned visual perception specifically for reading and writing. So first and foremost, we have to discuss visual perception just a little bit before we get to the actual article. Visual perception is kind of just how people see things. So, and how we're actually like comprehending and how that information is going back to our brain and how it's being translated. So, when it comes to reading and writing, it's basically how people are actually looking at the letters or looking at what they're writing whenever they're reading or writing, and how they're actually like kind of understanding it and comprehending it and how their brain's translating that. So, that's going to be different across cultures and all around the world because each culture has their different languages, and so that's going to be always different. So the article that I found, it was actually pretty interesting. I kind of learned some new things that I didn't realize before about different cultures. It's called Cross-Cultural Differences in Directionality by Israel Naxon. So this article was about a study on how they wanted to understand the performance of subjects with left to right and right to left directional habits. So that means basically reading and writing left to right or right to left. And we kind of they actually was comparing across three different sample sizes, or three different populations. That's what I'd say. Three different populations, and their populations that they were based on ethnicities, because there wasn't like from a specific country. It was just more like they had English readers, Hebrew readers, and Arabic readers. So it wasn't from a specific country. So they were just basically seeing if anyone who could read English, anyone who read Hebrew, anyone who read Arabic. And actually some of the participants in here actually kind of knew both. They knew Hebrew and English. So at the beginning they kind of explain how they kind of expect how each sample is going to actually perform. For English readers, like all of us, we read left to right. So they were very they're going to be consistent on how they actually read and write for the experiments, which we'll get to in a little bit. But so they were pretty much going to think that English readers are very consistent and have very strong preferences for left to right reading and writing habits. Now for the Hebrew readers, it was a little different. They said like a weaker directionality, and when they say weaker directionality means they have, they read and write from right to left for their Hebrew language. However, when it comes to digits, musical notes, and English script, they actually read and write left to right, so it's kind of a mix-up between. So they were kind of in a mixture, and they were like the odd one out, I guess, in that kind of regard. So they weren't sure how they were going to test in this experiment. They didn't know what preference they were going to have. So yeah. And the last sample that they had was Arabic readers, and they were thinking they were consistent too, because Arabic readers actually read and write right to left, and they're more consistent. They're taught to read right to left, not like Hebrew readers, even though they kind of compare them together, saying that they have more, their languages are kind of similar, but they're taught more consistently instead of Hebrew readers, which kind of have a mixture of how they read and write, their reading and writing habits. So this study actually wanted to test the hypothesis that the reproduction of single stimuli is affected by the directional properties of single elements, such as single letters like A, C, D, and while the reproduction of a series of stimuli is affected by a series of elements. So by like words are specific for each language. So they didn't just pick English words and were like, here, go read it. It was kind of a mix of, they did a mix of English, Hebrew, and Arabic. So they wanted to compare the performance of patterns of the English readers, the Hebrew readers, and the Arabic readers. And so they did two experiments. In the first experiment, they did single stimuli, such as letters. And the second experiment, they did multiple stimuli, which is just words. and they kind of expected, like I said earlier, they expected English readers and Arabic readers to be very consistent with their directionality. However, with the Hebrew readers, they may be like, and this study claims that Hebrew readers would be more like English readers in the first experiment, about like single letters. However, they would be more consistent and more aligned with Arabic readers in the second experiment, which is about words. So they tested that, and they did the two experiments, and they found their conclusion actually confirmed their hypothesis that they were actually able to reproduce each with each stimuli that was present. They were able to actually reproduce the directionality. However, one thing that was actually kind of interesting is they determined that the direction corresponds with the dominant language in one's own language. So saying if one person is taught, well, take English readers as example. So if one person is taught how to read from left to right, they're going to read and write left to right no matter what happens. So it kind of corresponds with their culture. And the conclusion also found that 97% of English readers and Hebrew readers showed a left to right preferences, while the Arabic readers did a 75% showed right and left preferences. So it was kind of a very strong the English readers and the Hebrew readers are very consistent. However, the Arabic readers are just not, were a little bit inconsistent. I mean, it was still definitely a strong number. But the findings from the Arabic readers actually brought up a question about genetics and how culture can actually override something about genetics. The Arabic readers actually read and write right to left. However, in the study, they say that this kind of opposes the left, how right-handers like to prefer left to right. It's a genetic thing, and so they prefer left to right. However, because the culture of Arabic readers teaches them to write right to left, that actually overrides how genetics actually prefers. So that actually kind of shows that culture definitely has a very strong impact, even though it may be more comfortable to read and write left to right. I mean, the culture taught them to read right and left, so they follow the culture and not how genetics teaches us how, or the genetics programs us to. So that is definitely saying that culture has a very high impact. And also with the Arabic readers, it also shows a difference between the sexes. Now, in the experiments, they had females and males from the Arabic readers. And it said that men from the Arabic readers actually had a stronger preference for right and left. So that means they had a stronger preference, the sexes had a strong preference, and that's because of how the sexes are taught in Arabic countries. So men are more taught, there's norms, and men are more heavily taught that reading and writing is very important. While the females, it was not as emphasized. So there was a sex differences between the Arabic readers. However, for the English readers and the Hebrew readers, there wasn't really a main difference because the sexes are both equally taught how to read and write. So there wasn't a major difference. So I find that the conclusion of this article is very interesting and teaches us that even though genetics plays a part into our life, culture can easily override that and kind of hints into that nature and nurture debate. But yeah, hopefully this was informative, and hopefully I was able to clear across how this article, what this article actually tested. So thank you for your time, and have a good day.